So let me tell you about my Barefoot Revolution. So people are often asking me about barefoot, what it means, why I wear them, what are those funny things on your feet sometimes. So let me explain how it come about. I had really bad pains in my feet, arthritis in my toes, plantar fasciitis, all sorts of stuff going on. And I thought the solution was supportive shoes. So I got to a stage where I was looking for more and more supportive shoes to try and help my painful feet. It was too painful to walk in barefoot, not even around the house, not even on the kitchen tiles and stuff like that. So I would wear Crocs around the house indoors, lovely, soft, lovely, comfy. So typically my trainers look something like this. Nice big thick cushioned sole. I would look for the ones with the most padding possible, and that would be what I wore. And you can see that they're actually not very flexible at all. They're quite stiff. They don't allow for much movement in the foot, especially from the sort of mid-foot down. There's nothing there at all. And that is what I was pretty much living in. So working at Hermes, when it got to winter, I picked myself up a lovely pair of winter boots. They're nice and thick, they're nice and sturdy, great grip, they're warm, they're fluffy inside, they're waterproof, and they were absolutely beautiful for keeping my feet warm and dry. However, by the end of winter coming into spring, plantar fasciitis was terrible in my feet, so painful, because my foot had been strapped into these and there's barely any movement at all in those. So your foot is like this the whole time. There's no flexing and moving around of the muscles and the tendons underneath the foot. Ankle is rigid. So again, the calf muscle and the Achilles tendon start to tighten up because they're not moving around. And so yeah, hideous problems come springtime. I had already started to look into some barefoot stuff, but the pain in my feet was making it seem like a bit of a no-go really. I had bought these, which are like yoga shoes, and I'd bought them partly to try and wear sort of around the house and stuff like that, and I also bought them to pop into my handbag at Christmas for walking home from the pub. I quite liked them actually. I was still suffering a little bit walking around the house, but I was getting on okay. But looking at the shape of them, they weren't a very good match for my foot. What I found was my big toe was kind of poking up through the fabric, which was quite painful on the toenail, and it was kind of sticking out the side. So two of the requisites really for a barefoot shoe are that it should be zero drop, which means unlike my trainers, which are thick at the sole and a little bit thinner here, this would be probably a 1 centimetre drop or something like that, maybe more, I don't know. But bigger here, smaller here. So with a barefoot shoe, we're looking for zero drop, so the same all the way along. And the other thing we should be looking for is that it should be more actual foot shape, so it should have a wide toe box, which this one really doesn't. But they are a good start, quite like them. So I then started to go into, on Amazon, if you look up Aqua Shoes or water shoes, you'll find these kind of things for wearing in the water or when you're on boats or paddle boarding and kayaking, stuff like that. They're quick dry, they've normally got holes to let water out at the bottom and stuff like that. And oh my God, these are so comfy. It was a little bit hard work wearing them to start with doing my deliveries, but actually not as bad as I thought it was going to be, and I quickly got to like them. However, they are quite thin on the bottom. They're made of rubber, so they wear out quite quickly. Doing deliveries when I'm walking up to 10 miles a day, I was wearing through a pair of those in like a month. They're 25, 30 quid, but 30 quid a month. I love my feet, but I'm not sure I love them quite that much. So it's working out a little bit expensive. So I then started to look into, well, if I pay a bit more, do I get something better? And I got the Merrells. So again, we've got a 0 drop. We've got a more foot-shaped toe box going on, although they are still quite narrow. Still quite sort of soft, plenty of flexibility. But as it turned out, paying more did not actually really get me a better sole, and they were still starting to wear out quite quickly, so I promptly stopped wearing those for work. Still one of my favourite shoes, but not good for walking 10 miles a day in. I then came across Xero, and that's spelt with an X, X-E-R-O, and they have a 5,000 mile guarantee on their shoes and on their soles. It's a harder sole than the Merrell, which is a lot more kind of rubbery, but it's still quite flexible. They'll show you in their videos how they kind of roll them up and scrunch them, stuff like that. So a lot more flexibility still there than my old trainers. And 5,000 mile sole guarantee. These are actually my second pair now. My first pair, they were starting to get a little bit thin on the bottom, but still pretty good wear, even though they were thinner. The main problem I had was because you can wear them either with or without the insoles. So without insoles will obviously make them even more barefoot, less padding, less support on the foot, which is what I chose to do. But I then started to wear through the lining in the bottom of the shoe. So I've got myself another pair, and I have left the insoles in on these ones. I could have just put the insoles back on the other ones, to be fair, but I thought I'd treat myself to a new pair. And I really like these. They are very wide on the toe box, so it gives you room for your feet to spread, your toes to spread out. They're super comfy. They do, however, look a little bit clumpy, especially on women, and they can look a little bit like clown shoes depending on what you're wearing with them. So I'm a bit wary about when and how I wear those. I do tend to keep them just for work. So as we came into winter though, I wanted something like that, but with all the benefits that my old winter boots gave me, the warmth, the waterproofness and all of that sort of biz. So I then ended up with another pair of Zeros, and these are the Xero Alpines. So same sort of sole as the other ones. They've still got the 5,000 mile guarantee. They've got a little bit more tread there for snow and stuff like that. They are 100% waterproof, and yes, that has been tested, and they are nice and kind of fleece lined around the top edges. They are super warm, super comfy. Because they are a winter boot, they're not as flexible as the trainer, but still much more flexibility. We've still got the Xero drop, so same thickness front and back on there to allow your foot to move around. So they're not as good in a barefoot capacity as the trainers, but for a winter boot, a very good compromise. Plenty of toe room, lovely and comfy. I was wearing these throughout most of the winter with no socks, and was still beautifully warm, so loving those. As we started to come into spring, they were actually getting too warm, so I was looking for something a little bit less fluffy, but that would still give me the waterproof, because you know what it's like with the April showers and whatnots. So I ended up with some Field Grounds. Not the sexiest of boot, I admit, but they're only for work. Again, with Xero drop. We've got a flexible sole, forgive the mud, didn't have time to clean them. And we've got, again, a nice very wide toe box. It's not the most attractive shape, to be fair, but it is super comfy. They're 100% waterproof. They do still have a little bit of fluffiness, so they are still quite warm. Again, I tend to wear them with no socks, and I really like those. They're really comfy, and they do have a little bit more of a trainer feel to them than the Xero winter boots. So nice and flexible, nice and soft. Talking of trainers, I then started to look into actually running barefoot. So as my feet have now sort of gone through the winter, I've got getting on for a year in barefoot shoes of one description or another, I thought it was time to see if I could actually start running in them as well as just walking. I tried running in my Merrells and in the Zeros, and they were very, very thin, very hard work. And so I wanted something a little bit more supportive, with just a little bit more cushioning underfoot. So I went with the Innovates. So they have zero drop, but they do still have quite a thick sole there for a little bit of cushioning as you're running. I didn't get on with these terribly well, actually. I quite like them as a sort of day wear trainer. However, they're very narrow on this side of the foot here, and they actually pinch and rub on my little toes. I don't know whether it's just because I've got so used to now having room for my toes, but I don't like that it touches the edge of my foot, and I can feel that when I'm running. So they got ditched quite quickly as a running shoe, but quite a nice, just normal trainer to wear. I also bought a pair for trail running because the grips on those were not great for trails. So I then bought another pair of Merrell, nice wide toe box, got the zero drop. What I'm not happy about with these is they do actually have arch support here. So it's very, very rigid at this point, and inside you can feel where it's built up around the arch. I presume that's to give your arch a little bit of protection on the trails, because then obviously anything digging into that or landing on a tree root or something like that would hurt quite a bit. So I'm guessing that is the reason for that. Great tread on them, love the tread, but not a fan of this. Having worn now the zero drop and the zero support, it feels like there's something just stuck underneath my foot. And so last but not least, another pair of zeros. So these are the Zero HFS. If you look on their website, they give a few different definitions of what the HFS stands for. But these are billed as a kind of running shoe. They do have a specific trail shoe, but they do say that this one is okay for trail as well. It's got a bit of tread on the bottom. They're very, very flexible. They're very, very lightweight. They've got what they call the harass straps, so they kind of tighten up around the heel as you pull on the laces, but I tend to have my laces quite loose. Loads of toe room, so no rubbing. Again, they're quite funky. I guess they can look a little bit clown shoe-ish at times, depending on where you're wearing them, how you're wearing them. Can't say as I walk around Tesco's in them, a little bit funky. But I really like them, and they're really comfortable, super flexible. I've run up to 11.5 miles in those now. Feet are used to it. No blisters, no rubbing, no sore feet. And I've even noticed less calf ache, less aches in general. My hips don't hurt as much. So I am definitely all over the barefoot shoes, and that is my selection.